Om Vang me manasi pratisthita mano me vachi pratishthitam aviravirma edi vedasyama ani sthaha shrutam me ma prahasihi anena dhitena horatran samdadhami ritam vadishyami satyam vadishyami tanmamavatu tadvaktaramavatu avatu mam avatu vaktaram avatu vaktaram. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So, to recapture this Aitareya, so what we did first 3 chapters of the first part, which Shankaracharya considers to be a secret knowledge, the knowledge of the creation of the world through the vision of consciousness. Yeah? So first Atman, the self, manifested the worlds, the upper and lower ocean and space in between, where the heaven is the bottom for the upper ocean and the earth is the top for the lower ocean, and in between we have space. Then he populated it with the dwellers, and the dwellers were the consciousness, the faculties of a universal Purusha. They came down into this inconscient ocean, were gobbled by that wave, infinite wave of the inconscient ocean, and wanted to have the dwelling place. So they wanted to recreate Purusha. Purusha, universal Purusha, had to be recreated here from the bottom of things in the inconscient ocean. So they started to build up the bodies, and so they arrived through the cow and the horse to the body of man, and they dwelt there, recreating the universal Purusha in the individual form. This was the chapters we went through, and then he wanted them to be embodied. He wanted to create for them murti, the body, annam. So he created for them first embodiment, murti, and that food, and then he wanted to catch it first by speech, then by mind, and by breath, by sight, by hearing, by mind, and he never could catch it by any of these faculties because it was avoiding him, running away from him. And he caught it by breathing out, which is the foundation for death. It's by death that he could embody himself in this manifestation. Death is the means of embodiment in the body. Yeah? So to be material means to accept this means to die. Otherwise, there would be no embodiment. He can stay without physical body. So, and then he thought, without me, how should all this be? So kind of this creation became in itself the creation, as it were. This is the question which he had. This is Saikshata katham vidamadrate syaditi. How it could be without me? Saikshata katarena prapadyayiti. By what means, by what gate I should come down there? Saikshata yedi vacha bhivyahritam. If by the speech it is being spoken, yadi pranena bhipranitam. If by the breath it is breathed, Yadi chakshusha drishtam, if by the sight it is seen, yadi shrotrena shrutam, if it is heard by the hearing, yadi tvacha sprishtam, if it is touched by the skin, yadi manasadhyatam, if it is thought by the mind, yadi yapanena bhyapanitam, if it is breathed out by the breath, yadi shishnena visrishtam, and if it is by procreatory organ conceived, Athakohamiti, then who am I? This is a very interesting question. If it is all done by these faculties, they are doing their job without me even wanting it. So it's happening by itself. It's automatically intrinsic in the nature. So the question comes to that, who is this then? Where am I in all this? That Atman, that first Atman, who was at the beginning alone, asks this question. And then there is interesting, how do I enter there? Sa etam eva simanam vidarye, he having torn this border, there was a border, fence, he torn it, or broke through by that door. Etaya dvara prapadyata, he entered. And he entered, and this is the dwelling, this is the dwelling, this is the dwelling, this is the dream, this is the dream, this is the dream. That's the text. Yeah? So we do not know what is this. Most probably this, and this. Yeah? The heaven, space in between, and earth, or mental, vital, and physical consciousness or embodiment. So he has three embodiments as the self. These three embodiments are known to us from Aitareya, which we will also look into. Aitareya Upanishad, that is Manomaya Purusha, Pranamaya Purusha, and Annamaya Purusha. Yes? So three Purushas, three Atmas. Manomaya Atma, Pranamaya Atma, and Annamaya Atma. So the Aitareya will speak about these Atmas, these selves, embodied self in the physical, embodied in the vital and mental and even supramental and transcendental. And these are Atmas or Purushas. Purusha and Atman, both are used in Aitareya. Quite interesting. Because Purusha now represents Atman, in consciousness. So Atman is the self and Purusha is the consciousness of that self. As Sri Aurobindo would say in the Kena Upanishad, the commentaries, he will say that there are only two realities, the self and the Lord. So the self is the being and the Lord is consciousness. Being and consciousness, only two realities. So being is Atma and Purusha is consciousness, which has faculties. These faculties are actually consciousness. There is no other consciousness. The other consciousness is Purusha. Purusha himself is consciousness, who has faculties, who operates by faculties. So consciousness operates by faculties. It's not some kind of, an abstract notion or some kind of concept, Yeah, so we have consciousness or some awareness. This awareness operates through seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking, feeling, and being in the body. It has a particular operational functions, and we cannot be avoided. If I will become blind, deaf, unthinking, unseeing, and not feeling anything, not touching anything, then there would be no consciousness. That's it. Just imagine yourself not operating by any of these faculties. Where would be that consciousness? Even inwardly, when we think, oh, I will be inwardly there, something. So inwardly also, we are seeing, hearing, expressing ourselves, thinking, feeling, inwardly feeling. And if feeling is not there inwardly, then what is consciousness? Where is the Purusha? So this is something which unfortunately our psychology nowadays does not really address. They deal with consciousness as some abstract notion, and they cannot really figure out what it is. If they would be more concrete, like Upanishads do not bewilder us. They speak. It's very concrete and very practical. Consciousness becomes practical because it's constantly present now in all these activities. What we are discussing is consciousness. You are seeing, thinking, hearing, feeling. I'm speaking. It is consciousness speaking. Whatever it may be consciousness of the vital, of the mental, or maybe something higher or deeper, but it is still consciousness expressed through the means it is using. Yeah? And the self is something else. It's very interesting. It's the focal point of the being. It is that very um, that one who is always in everything, Atman, which is everywhere expressed in whatever form. The only one who is, number one, as it were. And that number one, and that's why we have interesting words, one and oneness. Yeah? Oneness means all the ones come together in one. So this is Atman. It is a being. It does not really need consciousness to operate. It will be there even if Purusha is not there. Even if, I'm saying like this because we have to understand the difference between the two. Purusha is always there, but the description was made that Purusha was created by Atman for the sake of embodiment. Yeah? So the consciousness projected itself into this inconscient for the sake of embodiment of Atman. But if that projection, that sacrifice of Purusha is not made, and Purusha is kind of intrinsic with Atman, not yet manifested by Atman, not made, then Atman still will be there. It is there from the beginning. Atma Vaidamagra Asitya. Atma indeed was at the beginning. So it doesn't go anywhere. Purusha may disappear, the embodiment, the manifestation, the universe may collapse, but Atman will not disappear. All right, that's basically it.
So I had a question, Vladimir.
Yeah.
And that was, I'm a little puzzled. You said that all the faculties were there, you know, the eye, the sight, the seeing, the hearing, the touching. And then after that, he said, by what gate should I come down? Does that mean that the faculties existed without the Atman in the beginning? by themselves they could come into being or come into existence, and then he had to come down and manifest in a body and then take the faculties as instruments?
Well, if we follow the description of this Aitareya, we will see that all it was created by Atman, yes, and Purusha, and Purusha's faculties. He heated Purusha up, and they broke forth. It is described as if, of course, independent from Atman, because that is the whole puzzle of the manifestation. Yes, so Atman, who is the self, suddenly realizes that he is not needed, as it were, by nature. Nature is making everything by herself, as it were. It operates already. It is so self-made, so perfectly made, sukritam, as it is said, well, perfectly made, that it can live by itself in as the prototype of Atman himself. It exists, it operates. And so I think in his self-awareness, he wanted to be a part of the deal. He didn't want to be an originator of the thing and then standing behind it, only watching it as a witness. He wanted to be embodied. So when he entered, this is the dwelling, this is the dwelling, this is the dwelling, means that the self is present on each of these levels. On the physical also, Atman is present, on the vital and on the mental. And that self is not just the self which was the origin of this all, which is the self, but it is kind of a new self. So Atmanatmanam abhisam vivesha, as Taittiriya would say, he entered himself by himself. It may give us some hint. Yeah? So that self which we created first with all this, he entered by himself. And everything became steady because he is now in his full awareness within this particular body or this embodiment. So this is the complexity of our consciousness and psychology, which is addressed only in the Upanishads, by the way, because anywhere else one cannot even understand these things. How can we speak in that manner? So they give this mythology, this vision for us for our mind to find the answers in the right way. Yeah?
Thank you.
I know there is much more to it, and you will be discovering it all the time. It's actually packed with significances and symbols, and there is much more than what we are talking. And you will see that everything comes together within this vision. It's really an intuitive vision, or even higher. On the nature of our psychology and our body, and you see that there is no difference. They don't make the difference between the body and psychology. Now we will come to the body in this section. So chapter 4, it means there will be chapter 1 in the second half, or chapter 4. We can look at it like this. So Purushe ahava ayam adito garbho bhavati yadetat retas tadetat sarve bhyonge bhyah tejas sambhutam atman yevatmanam bibharti tad yada striyam sinchat yathainat janayati tadasya prathamam janma. Oh, in the male, first the unborn child becomes. That means the seed, yeah, basically. The seed is the first child, has to be kind of gathered. This which is seed is the force and heat of him, tejas, that from all parts of the creature draws together for becoming. So all the limbs, all the elements are put into the seed, like DNA. Yes, DNA of the person is gathered from all the members, from the brain, from the mental capacity, from the appearance, from the character. Everything is drawn into this seed. Therefore, he bears himself in himself. This is the perfectly made creation. One bears oneself in oneself and can prolong oneself through offspring in time. Though the death was the necessity for him to be embodied, now to overcome death, he is perfectly made and can generate the seed which will prolong his existence in time, in spite of death. Therefore he bears himself in himself, and when he casts it into the woman, 'tis himself he begets. And this is the first birth of the spirit. The first birth of the spirit is the casting of the seed into the woman. It's the conception or conceivement. Yeah? So when the birth starts, so there is the Hiranyagarbha inside the womb grows, the child is growing. Tat striya atma bhuyam gacchati yatha svamangam tatha. Tasmad enam nahi nasti. Sasyaitam atmanam atragatam bhavayati. It becomes oneself with a woman. So he is totally merged and becomes part of the woman of nature, as it were. And in this case, the seed is growing in the body of woman. Therefore, it does no hurt. It does her no hurt. And she cherishes this self for her husband that has got into her womb. So Tasmad enam nahi nasti. Though he is growing within her, he is not kind of hinasti, nahi nasti, does not hurt her. So she's as if she herself is growing, you know, with him. And she cherishes, she is feeding, nurturing, supporting this self growing in her as herself. Sa bhavayitri bhavayitavya bhavati. This is a very interesting Vedic language. The same root bhu used 3 times in one sentence. Sa bhavayitri, she the supporter, bhavayitavya, should be supported, bhavati is to be supported, the supporter. She supports the being in its growth, nourishes it, and she should be nourished. Tam stri garbham bibharti. So the woman bears the unborn child, and the man cherishes the boy even from the beginning. It was born. It is born. Sogra eva kumaram janmano gredi bhavayati sayat kumaram janmano gredi bhavayat yatmanam eva. Tadbhavait yesham lokanam santatyai evam santatahi me loka tadasya dvitiyam janma. And whereas he cherishes the boy before it is born, 'tis verily himself that he cherishes for the continuance of these worlds, for these worlds to continue and their peoples. For it is even thus the thread of these worlds spinneth on, unbroken. So this to have an unbroken continuation of the being in death, in time and space. So that is the way how it was achieved, how the death was overcome by birth. It's amazing. If you think of it, it's not only about human beings, it's about all beings, about greenery, plants. They're all surviving the time and death because of this conception. They they give a seed, and seed starts and gives another seed, and gives another plant and another seed, and the whole forest lives and lives in spite of dying all the time. And this is his second birth. Second birth is the growth of the child within the womb for the sake of continuation of the worlds. So mother is feeding now this child, so she is the food for the eater of the food. And then the third birth comes. Sosyayam atma punyebhyah karmabhyah pratidhiyate athasyayam itara atma kritakrityo vayogatav praiti saitav prayaneva punarjayate tadasya tritiyam janma. Lo, this is the spirit and self of him, and he makes it his vicegerent, wise, for the works of righteousness. It's a very ancient language. Sri Aurobindo writes it in 1901. Now this is other self. I can translate it in my way. Now this is other self when it has done the works it came to do and has reached its age. Lo, it goes hence, and even as it departs, it is born again. And this is his third birth, the third birth of the spirit. So once the child is born and he lives his life, the being, and he comes to the end of his life, fulfilled all his purpose, then he dies again. So there are 3 deaths and 3 births. First birth is conception. Second birth is nourishment of the child within and birth into world, and then the separate living and oblation of this body into the funeral fire. So we have 3 fires and 3 oblations. First oblation is the seed cast into the fire of a woman. Second is the feeding. The woman becomes the food for the child. She feeds him with her body, with her self. And milk also. When the child is born, the milk is given. Milk is Soma, put into the fire of the being. Yeah? And then he, as the food, now is put into the fire, funeral fire finally. Oblation, and so he is born again. So these 3 oblations, there is the whole vision of Panchagni Vidya, where this continues, and once he is made oblation into this funeral fire, he is going to the moon, and on moon all the devatas who gave him body, mind, and vital for his embodiment come and take away all his impressions, experiences, Soma, delight of his life. They partake of his delight. And so once he's emptied, he gives away his share of delight to the devatas, to the cosmic devatas who are standing behind the nakshatras. Then empty, he falls back to earth. He is falling back to first space, where he falls as a rain into the earth. Then he grows, notice this oblation into the fire of earth. From earth he grows as greenery, as food is taken and eaten up, again oblation, onto the fire of the human being or whatever being as a food. And that generates the seed, and that seed is again, and the whole process. So we have the cosmic cycle together with the human cycle coming into one bigger cycle. And this is called Panchagni Vidya. 5 oblations of Soma into 5 fires. From the cosmic cycle to the human earthly cycle and back to the cosmic one. This was considered to be a secret knowledge of the kings, of Rajarshih, of the rishis, the kingly rishis, yeah? King sages or king seers, seer kings. Of Kshatriyas. Actually, it was not Brahmanic knowledge. We know about it from Chandogya Upanishad, where Kshatriya, the king, teaches the Brahmin about this Panchagni Vidya, about the traveling. And Mother even makes comments on it. It's quite interesting. She says that there can be a state in which the soul follows this cycle and falls from the moon, so to say, because moon is a very mysterious being, by the way, where we are all gathered after death for some reason, and it is considered to be the planet for Pitris, for our ancestors. Yeah? So to say, we are always oriented towards the moon when we speak about ancestors. That's why in the Chinese calendar, moon is the most important. It's all because of ancestors. Yeah? There are no gods. And sun is the gods. Sun is the gods and moon is ancestors, Pitris. Pitris and gods, both are mentioned in the Veda, by the way. That's why we have 2 calendars, moon and solar and lunar calendar.
So this is a symbolical moon, not exactly the moon that we.
We do not know really.
Yes.
Well, if we have this physical moon and we have physical sun and we have
Yes,
physical body, good.
yeah,
Most probably both, I guess. Yeah.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
we are all symbols here. Even our body is symbolical in a way. But at the same time, it is real. It is physical. So, and since moon plays this role, constantly stirring the liquidity on earth, the water, it goes up and down. The whole life, breathing in and out, is taking place. Without moon, I do not know how we would even live. The ocean waves, the ocean would stagnate and there would be no streams, there would be no currents in the ocean, there would be no life, really, if you think of it.
Actually, in India, they believe that even the monthly cycle of the woman
Yeah,
is is um, is
depends
maintained
on
by
it.
the lunar cycle. It depends on the lunar cycle, which is of 28 days.
Yeah, and you can imagine this is so important for the birth.
Yeah,
Yeah. So in a way, the birth, moon, everything is connected, only we just don't see how
yeah,
yet. Yeah, we think our mind is separating everything into sections and looks at sections as if the whole explanation is there. But all is connected.
mm,
Yeah. So, and then it ends this chapter, Taduktam Rishina, and that was spoken by the Rishi. Garbhenu san anvesham avedam aham devanam janimani vishwa shatam ma pura ayasih arakshan nadhah shieno javasa niradiyam iti Garbhe evaitachayano Vamadeva Yavamuvacha. Vamadeva spoke. Therefore it was said by the sage Vamadeva, I, Vamadeva, being yet in the womb, knew all the births of these gods and their causes. In 100 cities of iron that they held me down and kept me, I broke through them all with might and violence like a hawk. I soared up into my heavens. While yet he lay in the womb, thus said Vamadeva. So remaining in the womb, he already made himself free. These are the also interesting stories. There were several beings. Vamadeva is one of those who was totally aware already in the womb, was liberated in the womb. He was mukta in the womb already, before even being born. And when he was born, and that's most probably the sign of these involutionary beings, as Mother says, that they come already fully conscious and formed and aware of what they are here to do. And then when they are born, they just follow that. Krishna was one of those, or Vivekananda was one of those, by the way. It's quite amazing to think of them, you know. Krishna was totally aware from his childhood about his divinity and his mission and so on. These are avatars. Avatars are involutionary beings. Yeah.
Could it be that since it's a Vama Deva, Vama is the dwarf?
Oh, Vama is not necessarily a dwarf. It
Okay, so
is,
it's not psychic. It's
no,
not
it's
talking
not
about.
Vamana Purusha, no.
Okay,
It
thank
is opposite, it's blissful, it's a kind of joyful or uh, pleasure Vama. We have Vama Marga and Dakshina Marga. The Vama is, it's an interesting word actually, very ancient. Let's look into it. It could be some additional meaning. It means delight, actually. Lovely, dear, pleasant, agreeable, fair, beautiful, splendid, noble. Yeah, this is Vama.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, left and right. That is left. Left is always a bit, you know, kind of leading to the delight. Left is the path to the pleasure, whereas the right to the righteousness and the truth. Yeah, truth and pleasure. You remember this two
Yes.
paths in the Upanishads. So being in the womb, he already was released from all he was in the grip of these 100 um, of the cities of iron, Ayasih, Purah. You know. But he liberated himself like an eagle. He flew out. You know.
So the cities of iron are what when it
I think this is the grip of matter, yes. And in the womb, when the child is growing till before it is born, it is this fourth stage or third stage in Stanislav Grof. Stanislav Grof examines these matrices, the stages within the womb. Yeah, the first is oceanic stage, second, and the third is stage is the most difficult one because the pressure grows and you feel that you are completely compressed, yeah, before you are born, and then you are released, freedom. So the fourth stage is freedom, but the third stage is terrible compression and pressure. I think this has something to do with that. Yeah?
okay.
These 100 iron cities kind of enveloping us and pressing upon the being.
Thank you.
It's just an interpretation. You can think something else about it. We can think about the inconscient environment into which this being comes. Yes, as a hundred, as an infinite obstructions and which it has to overcome and break through. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
and then the last passage of this chapter, Sa evam vidvan asmat sharira bheda durdva utkramayamushmin svargeloke sarvan kaman aptvas amritah samabhavat. And because he knew this, therefore when the strings of the body were snapped asunder, lo, he soared forth into yonder world of paradise, and there, having possessed all desires, put death behind him. Yea, he put death behind him. Sa evam vidvan, knowing thus, asmat sharira bhedad, from this broken, from this departing from this body, urdhva, upward, utkramya, joining upward or moving upward, having moved upward, amushmin loke, svarge loke, in that heavenly world, sarvan kaman aptva, having received all or having realized all the desires, amritah, immortal, samabhavat, he became samabhavat, became immortal. Repetition became immortal. So it should be clear. And some abhava totally, absolutely became immortal. So we took only very small bit today, kind of second, third, fourth chapter, first part of the second half. And there is one more, which is to which Sri Aurobindo gives a lot of notes and commentaries, because it is about prajnana. Maybe I have time. Maybe I will finish the whole Aitareya, because we, according to our plan, we have to finish it already. Okay, koyam atmeti vayamopasmahe katarachsa atma. Who is this self? What we adore here, or what we worship here. Katarachsa Atma, who is Atma of these two? Yenava Pashyati, by whom we see, Yenava Shranoti, by whom we hear, Yenava Gandhana Jagrati, by whom one is I have to say, smelling the odor. Yenava vacham vyakaroti, by whom one is speaking. Yenava svadu cha vijanati, or the one by whom we distinguish the sweet and not sweet. So, kind of interesting. Who is the one? Who is the self? Who is this spirit that we may adore him? In which all these is the spirit, and which of all these is the spirit, by whom one sees, by whom one hears, by whom one smells all kinds of perfume, or by whom one utters clearness of speech, or by whom one knows the sweet and bitter. Yadetat hridayam, and now the answer comes. This one, this which is the heart, is mind also. Manas chaitat. Yadetad hridayam manas chaitat. So if you remember when his heart broke forth from his heart, mind, manas, from the manas, chandrama, this moon mind and heart are one lineage. Interesting. It's an ancient paradigm. Later mind shifts to the brain, but in the ancient paradigm it is within the heart. So that heart, that manomaya purusha, so to say, in the heart, not in the brain, that behind which there is a soul, yeah? And then there is this long list: samjnanam, ajnanam, vijnanam, prajnanam, medha, drishtir, dhritir, matir, manisha, jyutih, smritih, sankalpah, kratur, asuh, kamo, vasha, iti sarvanyevaitani prajnanasya namadheyani bhavanti. Sri Aurobindo, this translation is of early Sri Aurobindo. He changed totally later. So samjnanam is the essential sense. Ajnanam is the will. Let us leave it at this. And then vijnanam he translates as analysis and wisdom and intellect. As analysis, it's not anymore. Vijayanam is comprehensive consciousness. Prajnanam is apprehensive, objective vision. Medha, wisdom. Drishti, vision. Wisdom and intellect, medha. Vision is drishti, and continuity of purpose, dhriti, and feeling and understanding, matih, jyutih, smritih, sankalpa. Yeah, I will translate in my way. So matih is the opinion, manisha is seeking the knowledge, the mental formation, or translated in many ways. Jyutih, speed, smritih, memory, sankalpah, intention, kratuh, willpower, the power of creativity, let us say. Asuh is the power of being, beingness, kama, desire, vasha, the mastery or the will to possess, to control, we can say. Iti, thus, sarvanyevaitani prajnanasya namadeyani bhavanti. Thus, all these are the names of prajnana. And this is unexpected. Sri Aurobindo translates in his early translation, eternal wisdom. Prajnana is objective viewing of things. In order, so holding the image of things, in order to enter with it into the synthetic and analytic cognition, to know it as such, to know it separately as it is. In other words, to objectivize oneself. As Mother explains this, he created this world to objectify. So objectivize himself in order to see himself in detail. So this, to see himself, to objectivize himself is prajnana. So all these activities of consciousness, all this list of the faculties is for one reason. They are just the names, different names, pointing towards this objectivization of consciousness, or manifestation, as we call it. And then it continues to even strengthen this idea. Esha Brahma, this is Brahman. Esha Indra, this is Indra. Esha Prajapati, this is the creator of the world. Prajnana. Ete Sarve Devaha, these are all the gods. Imani cha pancha mahabhutani, and these are the five great elements. Prithvi, Vayur, Akasha, Apo, Jyotinshi, Tietani, Imani, Kshudra Mishraniva, Bijani tarani, chetarani, chandajani, chacharujani cha, svedajani, chodbijani, chashvagavah, purushahastino, yatkim chedam prani, jangamam cha patatriche cha sthavaram sarvam tat prajnanetram, prajnane pratishtitam, prajnanetrolokah, prajna pratishtha prajnanam Brahma. So all of these beings, all the manifestations, all the beings which are born, and here's the whole list how they are born. All the beings who are born, the creatures small and big, who are born from the seeds or of the sort from the egg born or sweat born, or things born from the womb, and plants that sprout, and horses and cattle and men and elephants, yea, whatsoever thing here breathes, and all that moves, everything that has wings, and whatsoever moves not, by wisdom, by prajnana, all these are guided and have their firm abiding in prajnana. For prajnana is the eye of the world. Eye, notice. Seeing. Wisdom. Prajnana is the sure foundation. Prajnana is Brahman, eternal. Sa etena prajnena atmana smarloka tutkramyamushmin svargeloke sarvan kaman aptvam ritach samabhavat. And he, by the strength of the one who has consciousness of prajnana, of the wise, and seeing self, the sage having soared up from this world, ascended into his other world of paradise, into that world, heavenly world, and there having possessed desire, put death behind him, yea, he put death behind him, he became immortal. Now, this is the whole Aitareya. Now, these two chapters which we did today, read today, they are not considered by Shankaracharya as for the initiate. Yeah? They are considered to be kind of for ordinary reading. But the first three are the creation where secret knowledge. But still, Sri Aurobindo gives the most explanation of these four major fundamental faculties of consciousness. Samjnanam, essential sense; ajnanam, comprehensive self-expression, the will; the logos, the word; Vijnanam, the comprehensive understanding of all things, how they relate, or the highest supramental intellect or supermind; and Prajnanam is the manifesting objectively the divine, yeah, in the form of material manifestation.
Uh, Vladimir, can you please just repeat this? Ajnana, Samyana.
Yes, Samjnanam is the essential sense. We looked into them already before, no? A little bit.
Yes. And which is the third?
Ajnanam is the action, comprehensive self-expression, what we call ajna as the willpower, yes? And vijnana is supermind, basically comprehensive understanding. And vijnanam is the holding the image of things in order to enter with it in synthetic and analytic cognition. So to know it as such.
Thank you.
These four, we spoke about them. They are, Sri Aurobindo calls them secret operations of consciousness, which are simultaneously present in every act. Yeah? So in order for us to act at all, we need these four simultaneously being present. Because in order for me to deal with anything, I have to identify myself with that. So to say that I have to inbringing of apprehensive cognition is samjnana. I have knowledge by identity. If I don't focus on anything, I cannot deal with anything. So for me to deal with this bottle, I need to focus on it. Yeah. So this is first contact is samjnana. I bring the bottle into my consciousness awareness. Then prajnana, I have to realize that this bottle is not me. Though it is now connected with me, it is also separately existing as it is. Yeah? Otherwise, I can't deal with it. Then I have to, Vijnana is that I see my hand, me, bottle, table in relations, how we all relate meaningfully. Yes, whether that bottle will fit into my hand and whether it has water that I can drink and so on. Drinking, water, hand, table, all this meaningfully related. And ajnana is the action. I can express, I can reach out and hold it and drink. So all of them are needed in any simplest action. These four are present
Yes. Thank you.
as one operation.
Hmm.
Great. So this was the great Aitareya, a profound Upanishad, very brief, you see, very short text. They don't waste their time for explanations, they just give the essentials.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
It's great knowledge.
It is. It is a
Very profound.
yeah, I agree totally. I just wonder who could have done this for us, just to give us such a gift.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question that I think you guys both know, but I didn't quite get? So, when immortality is spoke of, is it spoke of in two different ways? Like, one is just this, you have children, your children have children, and that sort of thing. And then is there a different immortality where he talks about that he put death behind him? Is that is different than the birth and rebirth cycle that's natural in nature? So are there two different paths that of immortality? Does that make sense?
Makes totally. One is Devayanam immortality and another is Pitriyana immortality. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Pitriyana is this through through birth and rebirth, or not rebirth, but through the progeny, offspring, yeah, continuation, which will be because my grandson will become my grandfather in the future when I will reincarnate. So to say, I extend my body in time, through my progeny. Yeah, absolutely. It's one type of immortality, which at the end will become a proper physical immortality. Yeah? But and there is the other immortality of consciousness, which is simultaneous to it, reincarnation. I become aware of me being immortal in this process in time, and so I don't lose myself anymore. And if these two immortalities come together, we will get that central immortality about which Sri Aurobindo and the Mother spoke, and the Vedas, especially Rig Veda, speak. They speak about the immortality of the physical existence, not through offspring, but through the being achieving it finally, because once the physical is flexible and luminous enough, substance is changing, then the soul doesn't need to leave it. Yeah, it can stay. Now we have to leave it. The death is the means of embodiment, as Aitareya says. But it will be overcome because it's just instrumental to something he wants to achieve.
Okay. And
And
that's the evolution that Sri Aurobindo speaks of.
Yes, evolution of consciousness.
Yeah. I think because through all these realizations, the very substance begins to change.
Right, and we can see it, yeah. Our substance is very different. The brain, all how we developed in comparison to whatever animal kingdom or plant kingdom. You just see how far we went in building this body to to suit that spirit's needs. You know, which we have to achieve, and it grows. It's not at the end. Sri Aurobindo says the man is the transitional being. Yeah, we are a transitional being. It's nice to know that we are not the end. There's much more to achieve and realize in the future. And maybe after some time we will meet in different bodies and in different capacities. And great. Okay, I will close with mantra. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you. Bye.
Beautiful.